Nebraska Preps postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
That's that voice. That means it's Monday. We are on another week of Nebraska Preps postgame with my main man, Jacob Padilla. I am old DB. Wow, trying to catch our breath. A few schedule changes. We were talking off pod about what's coming up this week in Grand Island. A couple of big matchups. I actually forgot that Central was playing Westside. I was so worried about getting the game moved to 5:30 on Grand Island, so I didn't have to drive back at 11 o'clock at night from GI that I realized, oh, yeah, that's right. We're playing a really tricky team, the number 5 ranked team in the state in Omaha Central this week. So, Jacob, how's it been, buddy? How are things?
Good. Looking forward to this week. The Heartland Hoops Classic is always one of my favorite weeks of the year. You just get to go out there and sit and watch hoops all day long. So it gives me a chance to see a lot of teams that I don't normally get to see during the season. You mentioned kind of schedule change. That was announced today that the AL, the Abraham Lincoln against Sunrise Christian game is off the schedule. AL is not going to be able to play in that one, and it's unfortunate. I mean, that when they scheduled that anyway, Josh Dix was healthy, and you're going to try to showcase one of the area's best players against one of the best teams in the country, and not going to get a chance to see that game. Sunrise is still coming to play against Link Academy on Friday night at GICC. But on Saturday, we're just going to go with, 7 games instead of 8 this year. And They did move the Westside Grand Island game from 9 up to 5:30. 5:30,
yeah.
Yeah, to replace that Sunrise and AL game. So
session 1 will be Ashland Greenwood and against Northwest. That'll be at 8. Osceola and Donovan Trumbull's at 9:40. Milford and Humphrey Lindsay Holy Family is at 11:20. And then 1 is a very tricky Concordia team. I don't think tricky is the right word. I shouldn't have said that. That's a good Concordia team. And we'll talk about them as they're tapping folks on the shoulder down there in C1 and saying, hey, you can talk about all these other teams if you want to. We're pretty good as well. They take on Aurora at 1, and then in session 2 it'll be Elkhorn North against GICC at 3:45. Westside against Grand Island at 5:30. And we got Wasatch and Link Academy at 7:15 to close that night out this Saturday, the 12th. So that is the adjustments as we try to catch up on what was a busy week. A little topsy-turvy week, man. You want to go A, B, C1? Flip a coin. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's just knock out that Heartland Hoops Classic, and then we can get back to the week that was. Just preview that off the top of the head. You ran off the schedule there. Obviously, I think the showcase game is a 7:15 game with Link Academy, who is one of the best teams in the country, against Wasatch, who came here a few years ago for this event. Had some really good players that year. And for Link Academy, it's a team that kind of came out of nowhere last year. They were a decent prep school team. I think Karam McPherson at Nebraska was there. I think one of the Porter brothers was there. But they went out and hit the recruiting trail hard and added some major talent to that team. Just looking at it, they've got Omaha Baloo, 5-star in 2023. They've got Jordan Walsh, 5-star in 2022, committed to Arkansas. Julian Phillips, a 2022 5-star, committed to LSU. Felix Akpara is a 2022 4-star, committed to Ohio State. Terrace Reed Jr., a 2022 4-star, committed to Michigan. And then Trey Green is a 2023 4-star as well, who's uncommitted. So those are some of the top guys you're going to be able to see on Link Academy. And then Wasatch, they've got Camden Heidi, who's a 3-star, committed to Purdue. He's from Minnesota, moved out there. Chris Bunch is a 4-star, committed to Syracuse. Roddy Gale is a 4-star, committed to Ohio State. So we'll see a couple of future Buckeyes facing off against each other.
That's Roddy Gale Jr., too, if that name rings a bell to some of you basketball heads.
Kaba Keita, 2022 4-star, uncommitted. Willie Lightfoot, committed to Bowling Green. And then Anthony Polish name, I think. Not going to try to pronounce it. Guy going to Sam Houston State.
Yeah.
So some pretty good talent on those two teams. I think it'll be a fun game for those of you that are interested in heading out there and watching out in Grand Island. And again, mentioned on Friday that Link Academy will take on Sunrise. And they've annual power, and they're one of the best teams in the country. So I'm a little disappointed that I'm not going to get a chance to see Sunrise. But, I mean, circumstances are what they are. And you mentioned nothing wrong with heading home a little bit earlier, because that is a long day out in Grand Island and a long drive back.
For me, I'm like, woohoo!
Yeah.
It fits.
And in the local teams, there's some really good matchups here. You got a bunch of top 10 teams with 2, 3, 4 losses, no more than that. Obviously, you've got the local Grand Island teams are all competing like they usually do, but you mentioned that'll be my first chance to see Osceola, who I know have got top 3 in D2. They've got a couple of really good players, and Isaiah Zelazny and Kale Gustafson. Donovan Trumbull is 16-2. Milford 16-4. Concordia 16-2. First chance for me to see all those teams, and then obviously the Grand Island Central Catholic kind of hosting the event. So
Humphrey Lindsay Holy Family, the only undefeated team left in high school hoops.
Scott.
Oh, that's right. I don't even know how I forget about Scott, but I just penciled them in, right?
Yeah.
So they're still the 2 top.
And Humphrey just beat Howells Dodge again in the final of the conference tournament.
Yeah, running that record to 20-0.
And that was not as close as the previous game in Howells. So, they've clearly established themselves as kind of the class of C2.
Yeah, C1. You mentioned Concordia, and still with just the 2 losses. And we talked about the ups and downs last year as they were kind of starting to think like, hey, this is a pretty good basketball team, right? Gained some good wins, had a little hard time establishing consistency. It has more than carried over into this year with a gaudy 16-2 record. And a lot of folks get a chance to put eyeballs on them and see just how they stack up with a pretty top-heavy and crowded C1.
Yeah, and they had kind of suffered that loss to Fort Calhoun early on. And Fort Calhoun's a good team, but I think that kind of woke them up a little bit, and they're kind of got sparked them a little bit, and they've been playing really well recently. They've got Carson Masson and Zach Kalus, coach's son, just dynamic backcourt that can really shoot the ball. And then they got 2 bigs inside, and Zach O'Harity and Justin on that can really play inside as well. So they've got good combination shooting and size, and that's what's carried them to where they are now.
Yeah, coming off of 2 good wins against Bergen and Plattsmouth. They got Mount Michael coming up, and then the good one against Aurora on Saturday. A lot of Friday, Saturday schedules this week, a little more traditional with the bulk of the games around the metro. I like the occasional Tuesday, Thursday game where you can go and kind of get an off-brand night of hoops, but seems to be a little bit more of a traditional schedule this week.
Yep. Honestly, I hadn't even really looked at Saturday much because I knew where I'm going to be. But, yeah, Friday – you've mentioned the Westside Central, and I'll probably be at that one. But there's some other good ones on Friday, too, kind of throughout the state. So it's a good week here as we kind of hit the official stretch run. We got 2 weeks left of the regular season before we hit districts.
Yeah, so this is one of those years, JP, where I think the 2 seed in a district, you're going to have some live 2-3 seeds in district play with the 8 district seedings in A and 7, right, plus the wild card. I think seeding's going to be important. This stretch run is going to be really interesting for some of these basketball teams that are kind of in that, that bottom tier of top 10 that is looking for a good matchup, maybe trying to avoid a bad matchup in the first round of districts like a Northeast or, a Pius who may or may not have had it figured out. Like this last couple, this is an important stretch for some of these teams.
Yeah, because you look at the 2 seeds in the kind of 4, 5, 6, 7 districts. There's going to be some tough games. We talked about kind of how the back end of that top 10 has been jumbled around all season long. It wasn't really any changes last week in the poll. I mean, the teams that lost in that top 10 lost to teams ahead of them. So it wasn't anything too dramatic about the results last week, but we still, I think, like you said, the seeding is going to be important there. Wouldn't be surprised to see some upsets in some of those districts there. I mean, it happens every year. We saw what happened with Pius and East last year, and games like that. So you really got to go out and earn it every year.
Yeah, no stats uploaded. I was looking to see the box score from the Millard South Omaha Central game earlier this weekend because I was just trying to kind of see who's picking up where they left off for Central as they've got West Side on Friday, so that obviously has my interest. But you look at the final, and it was 46-43, and without having kind of seen how that game was played or being able to look at the box scores, how much do you feel like you really know about Omaha Central?
Well, it was 38-30 Millard South heading into the fourth quarter. And then the Eagles
16-5 run.
Yeah, really turned it on to win that game and avoid that upset there. I think that the girls' game was pretty good before it, too. But
in a similar fashion where, except just the opposite, the Millard South girls go on a 17-2 run to close Central out. That was unbelievable.
Yeah, and man, Millard South, they've really proven themselves. And then Fremont went and lost to Lincoln High. Yeah. Big lead.
We kind of – so actually we were trying to drag you into it, but we didn't want to call on Friday. But Mike Sutter and I were going back and forth over the Lincoln High Fremont game. And I said, hey, listen, Lincoln High in the back, they just have the ability to really be disruptive. And it was going to be, could they get up and guard and close out behind the arc and keep McCabe and company from dialing from distance? And that was a heck of a comeback.
Yeah, because when I left, like the last I had saw that they had just started to get going and started knocking down threes, Fremont did, and create a little separation. And then I went to DC West, Ashland Greenwood, and Sauter, like after the game, showed me something like, look at this. I was like, wait, they came back? Oh. What? So that's pretty impressive from Lincoln High. But again, it's like Millard South. They've been on a pretty good run the last few years, but they're really looking the part right now.
And got off to the really good start, and that was without a healthy Cora Olson. Yeah. And now she's back healthy, and she goes for 19 the other night. She's just starting to kind of get her rhythm. That's a good bunch.
And then on Saturday, after I got done down in Lincoln, I went over to Millard North and caught the kind of the tail end of
the win over Southwest.
Lincoln Southwest Millard North girls, and then watched the boys game there. And Southwest was up 4 late in the third quarter when I got there, and Millard North closed the game on a 20-2 run, I believe. Oh. So they gave up 2 points in the fourth quarter. That was really impressive.
We've seen some abysmal fourth quarters over these last couple of weeks where we just saw a couple. We saw this one with Southwest and Millard South. Central girls had the ominous fourth quarter against Millard South. Central Millard South. Millard South scores 5 points in the fourth quarter. Central closes that out 16-5 in the boys matchup. And, man, just points are hard to come by. The end of the first quarter and that Central Millard South game, it was 6-6. It's just Central's a hard team to figure out. Just if you think you're going to get a good night from PJ and Jay Dawson, and who's the next capable chipping in?
Yeah, and that was their only game last week. So they're 15-4 now. They did get the win still. They've got 3 games coming up this week. Northwest on Tuesday, obviously Warriors on Friday, and then they go to Lincoln North Star on Saturday. And North Star's a tough team to figure out. They're a little tricky. They had
not a lot of depth.
No, but they've got some size for sure. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of the matchups for that one and how that one ends up turning out. But Central, I mean, they're still sitting there at number 5 in the coaches poll, kind of churning along there. Nobody's really been able to jump them, but I don't know that we've seen them. But at the same time, we've seen them go head-to-head with we saw them. They were right in that Metro semi.
Seen them against Millard North, saw them against Bellevue West.
So they're
very capable.
Exactly. So they're a tough team to figure out, but I think they're 4, 5, 6. They're kind of right in that range, in that second tier. Where do you want to go next?
Well, let's just go to the spot below them because I think they're interesting, and it's a Tuesday night game, one in which it may get my attention. We'll see how I'll be received back at Omaha North, but Gretna goes to North. Gretna's playing well, right? They had the hiccup against Papio South, but I think they've won 9 out of their last 10 or 8 out of their last 9. They got Bellevue West, then North Star, then Millard South, and then Lincoln Southwest, and Elkhorn South. So there's 6. They lost to Papio South. Then they've rattled off 4 more in a row. So that's 9 out of their last 10, getting Central South, Benson, and Millard West. Omaha North, conversely, has won 5 out of their last 6 and had won 5 in a row. Now, their best win was the early season win against Gretna. After that, it hasn't been all what I would call impressive, but to their defense, they're doing something that I think everybody's got to be able to do that's trying to build their program. You cannot give up games against programs that you're perceived better than. And North hasn't done that. And right now, their critics will say, hey, listen, they beat Northwest twice, they beat Benson, they beat Papio South, they beat Papio La Vista. They beat Benson. They beat Southeast. They took care of South. They took care of Burke. And they hung in there tooth and nail Saturday night against Papillion La Vista South. I don't talk about it's hard to win. And at 12-7 and you having previous success against Gretna, this is kind of a sneaky game for me. Stu has North in his top 10. They're currently outside of Mike Sauter's top 10, but they did receive votes, and Gretna firmly there in that 4 area. It's a sneaky good game, at least for me.
Yeah, and it's the North team that went 9-13 last year.
Yeah.
So and they've kind of made some good progress there. They've got, I think Mason Strong has been the constant there, but then after that, you look at it, he's the only one averaging double digits. It's different guys, different games. Dale Ron Thomas, Keyshawn Williams, Rondale Thomas. They've had different guys step up, all averaging between 7 and 10 points a game. In different games, it'll be different players. So, like you said, they don't have a ton of bad losses on their schedule. Probably the lost to Millard West, lost that one by 4. That's probably the biggest blemish on their team, just with where Millard West is health-wise and youth-wise at this point. But they avenged that loss to Papillion La Vista, beat them the second time around, and then, like you said, they've taken care of business against all the teams underneath them. That I think mentioned Papio South, they lost that one, and that's a team that they've had a tough schedule. Like they're sitting there still at number 9 with a 12-7 record, but it's because they keep losing to the better teams in the state, and they had 3-0 week last week. The schedule finally tailed off a little bit. Omaha North was the best team they played. They beat Millard West 61-42. They beat Bellevue East 63-40, and they beat North 65-61. And during those 3 games, Daniel Brocale averaged 25 a game on 56% from the field, 58% from 3, and 75% from the line. Not bad. He in each of those games, they've had a different second leading scorer.
Yeah.
They've had a second guy in double figures in each game, and it was Rio Haley with 11 in the Millard West game. It was Reese Kircher, 14 points, 4 threes, I believe, in the Bell East game, and then it was Bryson Ball, the other freshman, with 17 points in the Omaha North game. So that's kind of, I think, who Papio South is. They've got Brocale. He's going to go hard. He's going to get us some shots. More often than not, he's gonna get that 18, 20, 25 range. I think he hit 29 against Omaha North. So he's going to give you that every single night, and then it's just a matter of who steps up beside him. They've got so many young guys, so many newcomers to kind of varsity rotation, but they found a way to churn out enough of these wins to kind of remain in that top 10.
Yeah, it's a senior-laden bunch with Mackling and Medic and Brocale, but you get the 2 freshmen in Kircher and Ball, and I kind of like the X factor. He played well against Westside. I think Devin Jones gives him some toughness. He's one of those guys that's not going to settle to shoot threes. He gets downhill. He at least gives you some aggressiveness towards the 10 where you can kind of draw fouls and collapse. And so they kind of have a nice little mixture there. But we'll see if they can score enough, right? I think consistency, it's hard enough to get consistent second score, even a third, which most teams will need if you really want to make a good deep run at state.
And they got one game this week, and it's a big one. Friday against Elkhorn South. That's another one, big one on Friday there. again, teams kind of in that top 10 or the back half of the top 10 there. Elkhorn South, another team only an 11-7 record, but they're at number 7 in the coaches poll because of the teams they lost to and the teams they beat. They hung with Miller North on last week, 47-57, and I believe they had a lead in that game, and then Miller North kind of turned it on and pulled away late, and then they took care of business, won at Benson by 15. So they've got a Padilla South on Friday, and then Saturday against Burke coming up. So that'll be a big game on Friday, just kind of, again, for seedings, for wild card points, for kind of figuring out that back half of that top 10, because it's 7 against 9 right now in the coaches poll. How
do you kind of look at the movers and shakers when you look at the back half of that top 10?
Well, interesting week for Lincoln Northeast, who kind of a tough one. They escaped in overtime against Lincoln North Star, 58-57, and they were up 49-36 after the third quarter and got outscored 15-5 in the fourth. So that goes back to what you were talking about.
Those just
bad fourth quarters.
Yeah.
They managed to escape in overtime 4-3. So an exciting 4 minutes there. But North Star's size with Brendan Clemens had 20 and 12.
Boy, is he an enigma wrapped in a riddle.
Yeah.
He's capable when healthy, right? You just would like to see a little more dominance.
Yep, for sure.
Because he's got it in him.
And then Entala San Leonel, 15 points and 14 boards. So their size really gave Northeast problems. And you look at Northeast, they've got Porter Basil there at about 6'7", but outside him, they basically play 4 guards and wings, and they don't really have size coming off the bench. So that was a tough matchup for them, but they managed to get out there with the win. And then they lose to Creighton Prep, 53-57 at home. And that was a 51-all game late. And Prep, I guess, made the plays down the stretch to pull that out. And obviously, we saw what happened against the West Side, where the Warriors kind of ran Prep off the court. But they've rallied nicely since then. Have kind of established themselves like, yeah, no, we're still here.
And that was a tough weekend, too, for them. And I felt last week, they were tough against Bellevue West before finally succumbing to that pressure. It may not show it statistically, but, man, this has to be one of Coach Lutke's best coaching jobs.
Yeah. We talked multiple times about all the injuries they've gone through, and I think they've finally been able to put together the same rotation the last few games without any more guys kind of dropping out. So been able to find a little bit of a rhythm recently, and hit 11 threes in a win over Papillion La Vista last week, 11 for 21. Held the Monarchs at 35% from the field, won by 17 there. So they're sitting at 14-4. They've got Burke this week, and then they have their kind of annual rivalry game, trip down to take on Rockers in Kansas City.
Yeah, and I just think it's a basketball team where if they can find some consistent backcourt play, it changes the way that I think you view them, because you know that they're going to be well coached. They're going to be good with the scout. They're going to try to take away your first and second option. They can grind you. I think they just have to get consistency in the backcourt.
Yeah, and that Papio game, they got 20 points from Luke Jungers, 14 from Joey Reischel knocking down threes, and then 13 from Marshall Evans. That's kind of, they need that consistently. Yeah. That's what it's got to be. And then you have Casey O'Malley. He didn't shoot a ton. He had 7 points and a fish at 7 in that game. So between Evans and O'Malley, they need one of those guys in high double figures and making plays for others. And then they need that consistent 20 a game from Jungers to hang with the better teams on their schedule. But here they, again, 14-4. They're still hanging in there despite all the pieces they've lost.
We just kind of skipped over the top 3, right?
Yeah.
We'll work backwards and go to number 3 in Millard North, who, in my opinion, the team that has the ability to look the most different than they do right now, because if they make shots, it changes the way that they can play dramatically. I think we kind of know who Westside is. I think we know who Bellevue West is. Millard North has room for growth because they haven't shot it particularly well, especially from distance.
And again, last week they did not shoot it well. So we mentioned the win against Elkhorn South. The Storm led 41-39 heading in the fourth, and then Millard North closed the fourth quarter 18-6. So another
single-digit quarter.
They were 4-16 from 3 in that one. And then on Saturday against Lincoln Southwest for their senior day game, they were 1 of 13 from 3, and the only make was a Neil Mosser lob pass that somehow went in the basket. Yeah. Like I honestly, I had no idea what happened. Like I did not realize that it had gone through. I thought it was going to like hit the rim and drop, and somehow it went in because they took the ball out and passed it. And I was like, wait, what?
And he's the only one that took more than 2 threes.
Yeah, and so again, 1 of 13, and the one make wasn't even an attempted shot. So that is continuing to be the problem for them, and it like. You don't necessarily – I don't know if there's anybody on that team outside of Mosser that you would consider like a great shooter, but it is a little surprising to me that they struggled to the degree that they have. I thought they'd have a little bit more shooting, and it just never really came around. But that Southwest game, the first half, it was ugly both ways.
Yeah, was that a 20-19 half?
Yes.
And 2 single-digit scores in the second quarter, right? An 8-6 second quarter. And we're looking at that online, and we're like, what is going on in this game?
Missed layups and bad turnovers. And you had your best players missing bunnies on both sides.
Really?
Ryland Smith and Ben Hunziker and Jason Green and David Harmon. None of those guys could finish. In the first half, Harmon and Green had 5 points on 2 of 10 from the field, 1 of 3 from the free throw line. Took over in the second half, though. They kind of settled in, came back after halftime, combined 26 points on 11 of 14 shooting, 4-7 from the line in the second half. So Jason Green last week in their 2 games, 32 points, 21 rebounds, 12 blocks. So just, again, continuing to stuff the stat sheet, making plays on both ends of the floor. And they got enough from Harmon and Green, and then they kind of got some stops down the stretch. Southwest had a chance, but couldn't quite make the plays at the very end of that game to get the win. But Millard North, they're 17-2 now. Again, that tough week last week, but that 3-point shooting is going to come back to bite them eventually if they don't get hot at the right time.
Only 2 players shooting 37% or better from 3, and that's Mosser at 37%, Jason Green at 38%. Conversely, you take a look at, and we'll get to Bellevue West and Westside, you take a look at a team like Westside, who has 6 players of 37% or more. 36% or more, right? Stubblefield is a 41% three-point shooter. He's made 13 of them. You wouldn't consider him a great shooter. Payson Gillespie, 37%. He's made 35 of them. Tate Advadi, 39%. He's made 19 of them. Logan Wilson, 48%. He's made 24 of them. C.J. Mitchell at 36%, a little under, but he still made 12. Benning shoots 46% from 3. He's made 13 of them. It's just when you look at how these guys, Charlie Davis, who's coming off a fantastic weekend, 50% from 3. He's made 30. He's 36 of 72 from behind the arc. You just look at the equalizer and the ability to shoot the basketball. I think that's really right now what I think makes Westside different. Outside of the fact they do guard you in the backcourt.
Yeah, and 19-1 now. They took care of business, dominated Millard West and Bellevue East
kind
last
of a ho-hum weekend.
Like they should. You mentioned Charlie Davis, 19 points against Millard West, 5 of 7 from 3. But just kind of looking at the season stats, Westside is shooting 52% from the field, 38% from 3, and 70% from the line. That'll win you a lot of ball games. In addition to that, nearly a 2-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. 15.4 assists to 8 turnovers. Last week, in those 2 games, again, that's not the highest level of competition, but 38 assists and 9 turnovers in 2 games. That's pretty good, like going 5-on-0 in practice, honestly. So that's where they are. And then Bellevue West there, kind of the same deal. They took care of business. And 2 impressive wins. They doubled up Omaha South, who has really struggled this season. Hasn't quite been what we thought they were going to be, but 72-36, and then took care of business at Lincoln East. Like, that's a scrappy East squad, and they handle them 84-52 down in Lincoln. So
shooting 39% from behind the arc as a team, which is 1% better than Westside. But again, in that range, when you're shooting it as a team, and conversely, Miller North only had 2 guys that shoot 37 and 38% respectively. that's kind of the difference, right? We saw when Millard North played Bellevue West, it was those 2-3 little threes in a row in the second quarter that stretched that thing to 10. And Millard North didn't make very much from behind the arc until late, but, the lead was what it was. I think that's kind of the difference when I look at those three teams outside of Westside taking really good care of the basketball.
Yeah, and Josiah Deltzer, 32 points and 13 assists in their 2 games last week, 2 double-digit games for Jane Jackson. So good backcourt play for them to kind of lead the way there. Briefly, I think we hit on most of the top 10. Southwest is still kind of hanging in there at number 10. Lincoln Pius, the 10th, is receiving votes at 14 and 6. And they beat Lincoln East in the battle for A Street over there. Brady Christensen, 4 straight games with 15 or more points and 12 or more rebounds. He's now averaging 11.5 rebounds a game. That dude is tough, and when he's playing well, they've got a shot.
The summer too. Yeah, you know all about that.
Briefly, you want to flip on over to B and run through it real quick. We mentioned the big one, Scud against Bennington on Tuesday. And at halftime, it looked like, hey, here we go.
That game, yeah.
Bennington led after the first quarter. It was 28-26 Scud at halftime. And then the second half happened, and it was no longer close. 40-12 second half for Scud.
It's almost like, Journey and those guys are just like, all right, now's the time. Okay, let's go, fellas.
Yeah, and Bennington, they shot 44% from the field, only had 6 turnovers, and still got smashed like that. They only took 4 threes, and so that just kind of points to, I think, Scud's defensive pressure, their ability to take away shots. They didn't have a single guy in double figures. Seth Wempen and Austin Holtz led them with 9 apiece. So, again, a 40-12 half without a lot of turnovers, without, honestly, even a lot of missed shots. That just showed how hard that Bennington had to work. And conversely, how efficient that Scud was on the other end, scoring seemingly every possession, it would look like.
So it's interesting because if you're Coach Juergens, you're thinking to yourself, okay, you don't want to peak too early, but you can only do what you can do. And it's not like you're going to tell your guys, hey, don't play well during this particular stretch. The hardest job he may have is keeping them dialed in, right? They've got to be their own benchmark, right? They're competing against their own level of excellence. Like, hey, how good can we be?
And I think the schedule worked out nicely because you did have that Bennington game late in the season. And now you've only got 2 weeks left here to kind of get through the regular season. And I think once you get to the postseason, it kind of turns it up again all over again. And I think that worked out nicely for them to not, like maybe if they had not played any other top 5 teams the last 10 games this season or whatever, then I think you'd worry about that more. But I think they're operating at just such a high level right now. And Bennington get a chance to bounce back and score another big win with going to Roncalli on Tuesday, who's still at number 2 right now in the coaches poll, 12-4. Scottsbluff is at number 3. They had a huge win or a huge week last week, just destroyed Alliance and Sydney. Austin Thine broke the school record, 10 assists against Alliance, and then they followed it up with a school record 18 threes against Sydney. And then Bennington's still kind of sitting there at number 4, and Platteview rounding out the top 5, 15-6. They beat Ralston 60-49 on Thursday or Friday. I forgot one of the two. But Connor Milliken broke the school scoring record. And
Thursday.
Nate Thayer was no slouch, and to break his record during his junior year. Really impressive. So,
and Nate Thayer, the guy that we used to joke about, could probably go get buckets at the age of 35. His game was so efficient, right? I mean, he's just like he could score the basketball.
Yeah. So in 2 wins, they followed that up. Handled Hastings, 54 points, 31 rebounds, 12 assists, 7 steals, and 5 blocks for 2 games for Milliken last week. Not bad.
Well-rounded?
Yeah, I would say so.
Not bad. Next week. C1, don't worry. We won't forget about you. It is loaded at the top with Kearney Catholic, Ashland, Greenwood, Wahoo. We'll see what happens with Concordia out here in Grand Island. They're on the big stage, and Wayne and Auburn are like, hey, it's all about seedings. Don't forget about us.
Yeah, just saw Auburn beat Freeman 28-21 in their conference tournament final. That was tough.
It's okay. Styles aren't for everybody. We'll be back next week. We'll make sure we got you covered. That's Jacob Padilla. I'm ODB. It's Nebraska Preps Postgame.
a Hurrdat Media Production.